Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. Summer is just 8 days away as the season will officially arrive next Friday. But not before the arrival of the latest and greatest of what's happening in the sports world, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with Joe's JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, or even as early as this past Monday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And now that we get into a weekend where we could finally talk about an NBA Finals game. It feels like it's been a month since the Pacers and Thunder have played one another. And of course, I'm exaggerating, but considering Game 2 was on Sunday night, and then last night you had a Game 3 where it seemed like it took forever. And I want to start there real quick. Because is it just me, or has this NBA Finals not been able to muster up a lot of intrigue or drama, suspense, etc.? Now, I understand Game 1 toward the end there with the Halliburton shot, certainly dramatic, and they've done that over and over throughout the course of this postseason, as I've documented over the past couple of months. But with the game Sunday night, ho-hum, considering that the Thunder should be up 2-0 at that point. And then you had the wait between Sunday night and then last night, and it just made me think that unlike years past where, yes, you don't like those gaps, but it seemed like it was paced nicely, and it didn't seem like it took an eternity to get to Game 2 to Game 3 or even Game 1 to Game 2. And this has been the same schedule that's been going on in the NBA Finals for more than a decade. But for whatever the reason, maybe it's because of the matchup, maybe it's OKC, Indiana, it's not Boston, Golden State, it's not LA, Miami, it's not Golden State, or I should say maybe even the Lakers and some other team. When you don't have any of those combinations there, it does seem like you're just biding time until you get to a point where you can watch a basketball game. Where I get it, most of America is not looking at OKC and Indiana as basketball hotbeds when it comes to the NBA. But be that as it may, I'll just put that aside now. As far as the game last night, and coming into the matchup, I thought that last night's game, although it was important for Indiana because they have not trailed in any of these series, and because they've been from in front pretty much since day one of this playoff, I thought last night's game was bigger for OKC, and for this reason only. I felt that with how they performed here throughout the course of this postseason, and yes, they've been down 2-1, and we'll unpack that in a little bit, but I wanted them to piggyback that very good performance there on Sunday night with another good performance, just so they know that they are not fooling around, that they are a team that had won 68 games, arguably the best team in the sport, dating back to the first game in October up until Sunday night when they tied this series. And right now, I have to say that they are going to be up against it with a game tomorrow night, which I will unpack. But for the Thunder, I really thought that this was a big game, an even bigger game for them. And yes, they did have some wiggle room. Yes, they could afford to lose the game last night, which they did. But I wanted to see what they were truly made of, knowing that they had a resounding performance on Sunday night. And let me see them back it up with another one last night, which to me was similar to the Stanley Cup Finals, where Florida won that game in double overtime last Friday against the Oilers. And I wanted to see whether or not they could back it up with a big game there on Monday night, which we saw, and of course, I will get to in the next segment. But as far as the game last night overall, it was a battle back and forth, and it looked like maybe the Thunder were going to go into a fourth quarter with a 5-point lead, and not that that means a lot, because we all know these leads dissipate pretty much with the snap of a finger, especially as evidence for what we've seen with Indiana throughout this postseason. But I really thought that despite SGA not having a big game, especially 24 points on 20 shots, that's not the type of efficiency that you want if you are SGA. And yes, he could put up a lot of shots and still get a lot of points, but that was certainly a small output for the amount of shots that he took. And even though Chet Holmgren had a good game, 20 points, but in the fourth quarter, although had a basket, but certainly did not put the fingerprints that he had in the first three quarters. And even though Jalen Williams led in scoring, but pretty much that's all you got there offensively, which is a big giant question mark for this Oklahoma City team, which I'll talk about in a second when it comes to Game 4 and beyond. But the Thunder did not, I don't want to say they didn't show up. Obviously, that fourth quarter they didn't because they were outscored 32-18, and they did not get a lot of points from other players on the team that you saw there on Sunday night, whether it was the Alex Carusos of the world or the Aaron Wiggins for that matter. You didn't see any contribution from those guys, where the Pacers certainly got a more complete performance led by not only Pascal Siakam and, of course, the almost triple-double by Tyrese Halliburton, but even more so by Benedict Mathurin, who had 27 points off the bench. And when you get 27 points from a guy that is not a part of your starting five, that's when you know you're going to be in good stead last night, as the Pacers went going away there in that fourth quarter, as I mentioned, outscoring the Thunder by 14. And even though the Pacers looked like they were going to be in for it there when you got to the start of the fourth quarter, but did you have any doubt? Did you have any feeling that maybe the Pacers, with their first finals home game since 2000, that they weren't going to show up, that they weren't going to deliver? And sure enough, they did, led by Mathurin and obviously their point guard there, Halliburton, who made a couple of big threes. But for the Pacers right now, they are sitting pretty. It is looking very good, and in my gut, okay, and I understand you got to go with your gut more so than what's between the ears sometimes, but I have to say, I thought Indiana was going to win the series against Cleveland. Check those receipts. I thought that the Pacers were going to beat the Knicks in 6, in which they did. Check those receipts. And even though I picked OKC to win in 6, and they could still do that, but destiny is certainly, wherever it may be, it is hovering over Indiana right now, because they are playing a brand of basketball that is cohesive, that has been indicative of what we've seen here throughout this postseason. And yes, no last-minute comebacks last night as they won 116-107, but something is telling me that the Pacers are going to win the series. And that's not a knock on OKC and what they've been able to do throughout the course of the year, as I've detailed, but the Pacers always seem to find a way. And last night, like I said, OKC could have put some big-time pressure on the Pacers last night with the win, and that's why I wanted to see them perform, and I thought it was bigger for them. Now, in the grand scheme of things, we all know that if Indiana would have lost, all the pressure would have been on the Pacers, but because they have not played with any pressure this postseason, that's why I wanted to see OKC respond and piggyback off of that win there on Sunday night, and obviously they fell way short of that. But going back to the Pacers, I really truly feel and believe that they're going to win the series now. Now, that's not to say that OKC all of a sudden is just going to pack it in, mail it in, and that's it. We'll see you next year. I think they will be heard from, and something does tell me that they'll find a way to win this series. But with the way Indiana's coached, with the way they've played, and not only that, but they have better options. Now, granted, they put up the stinker there on Sunday night in Game 2, and they have put up stinkers in the past, whether it was Game 3 in Cleveland or even Game 5 in New York against the Knicks. But maybe they got that clunker out of the way, and now that the chips are starting to fall where they may, and that's not to say they could put up another stinker there, possibly as early as tomorrow night, but I just like their brand of basketball now more so than OKC. Because yes, I understand they do have some offensive threats, whether it is Jalen Williams or even Chet Holmgren, but something tells me that the stage is a little bit too bright right now. And unless they can put up a defensive game that we have ballyhooed about this team over the last, not only just this postseason, but over the entire season overall. And for the Thunder, now let me get to them, because I could talk about how much I think the Pacers are going to win this series, despite the fact that I picked OKC. But now we're really going to truly see what they're made of. And yes, they don't have to go far back in the memory banks to an experience that they had in the conference semifinals when they were down 2-1 to the Nuggets, and they came back and won a big Game 4 before winning the series. Now, it took 7 games, and it may be a 7-game series now, but I gave the Pacers the 2 games, and that's not to say OKC can't run the table from here on out, but I would think if the Pacers are going to win this series in 6, I could see this going 7. Now, that is a toss-up because I don't want to say these teams are evenly matched, but they do have the advantage, the Pacers that is, with the head coach, because Mark Daniel, he's a guy that is a little green, especially now that he's in the deep end of this pool. And even though their pedigree, based on the last 2 years, has been very good, but when you're going up against a championship coach who had one in Dallas back 14 years ago, and players that have believed pretty much since day one. And something just tells me that this is their time. But for OKC, let's just talk about tomorrow night. Obviously, that's a huge game. Can they come back from a 3-1 deficit if they lose tomorrow night? Absolutely, I think they can. Will they? I don't think they will. But I can really see them, whether it's SGA leading the attack to try to carry this team on his shoulders to get to OKC tied at 2. And then on top of that, these supplementary players that are going to have to step up big time. Now, Jalen Williams, I understand, 26 points last night and did play well. But at the same time, they're going to need the Lou Dorts of the world, the Chet Holmgrens of the world to make big shots or to make big stops. Because this is a team that's predicated on their defense. All the metrics and the numbers throughout the course of the year shows that this is one of the all-time defensive teams. Well, if they don't get out of the series alive, nobody's going to remember about the 2024-2025 OKC Thunder as being this all-time defensive team. That's going to get flushed right down the toilet. So now it's time for those guys to step up, and here it is. They've been down this road before. Granted, the stakes not as high as an NBA final, but just 2 series. They could go back 6 weeks to understand what it's going to have to take to win a Game 4 on the road. And that's going to be the storyline tomorrow night. And it's going to be a fascinating one because now OKC's on the ropes. Now, it's just a matter of whether they get out of the corner and fight back and get to Oklahoma City tied at 2, or are they going to be in that corner right before the bell rings, knowing that they're a little bloodied, bruised, battered, and scarred, but not knocked out. But if they lose Friday night, they're going to be that close to doing so. So that's why tomorrow night is fascinating. I think the Thunder will win a Game 4 tomorrow night. Something tells me that they will. I'm not going to sit here to think that the Pacers right away, there's a coronation, or they feel like obviously they have a big-time advantage here, knowing that they have another game in their building. They still have the home court advantage, obviously, if they win tomorrow night. But I would think that the Thunder, they showed you one time, and I think they're going to show you again tomorrow night. After that, to me, it's a toss-up. Because I could see Indiana winning a Game 5. I could see even OKC winning Game 5. And the Pacers have not been behind in any of these series throughout the course of this postseason. That's why I think destiny's in their hands. But then the flip side of that is OKC has shown that they've won a Game 4 on the road. Obviously, you can't just automatically assume that they're going to win a Game 5, or a Game 4, considering that they did do so 2 rounds earlier. But that's why tomorrow night's game is fascinating. And it's a must-watch from that regard to see whether or not this Thunder team, for everything that they've done here throughout the course from October to even last night, but do they have it in them to pull their team out of a 3-1 or potential 3-1 deficit and get themselves back home tied at 2? That's all there is to it. And I get it that I'm not definitive when it comes to this series because I'm not going to puff my chest out and be like, oh, OKC's going to win this series. No, I think they're in danger, without question. And with Indiana, the magic carpet ride that I talked about, it is real. And if you haven't paid attention in the opening round against Milwaukee when they won that Game 5 in dramatic fashion, or even beating Cleveland, who were the NBA's best team in the Eastern Conference by record, and they disposed of them in 5, and then beat the Knicks the way they did in surprising fashion in Game 1, and then obviously dusted them off in Game 6, how can you not pay attention to think that this Pacer team is not primed for an NBA title? Then obviously you haven't been paying attention or watching, for that matter. And that's what I've recognized, and I've watched this Pacer team throughout this whole postseason. And yes, I did turn my backs on them to pick against them in this series, but I didn't think that, there's no way that they're going to not win this series. Absolutely not. But here they are. They're halfway home, and they have another home game tomorrow, and I'd be stupid to think that, I think OKC is still going to win this in 6. This is based on what I talked about last Thursday in the preview, and not only that, but this is what I predicted, and that's how it's going to go. Oh, no. Absolutely not. But let's see what happens tomorrow night. And then the thing is that you have the one game tomorrow night, and they're not going to play until Monday. So I'll just have one game to talk about when we get together on Monday's podcast, and then set the stage for Game 5, which will be that night at OKC, whether or not the Thunder will be in a best of 3 at that point, or will the Pacers actually be able to win an NBA final on the road that night against the best out west. Next up, the Knicks coaching search, which, I'm sorry, this just goes to show you how the front office, as good as they've been over the last half decade, bringing in Thibodeau, obviously signing Brunson, which is by far the best free agent signing in the history of the organization. I mean, you can't even question, because a lot of people thought that Brunson, all right, playing with Luka, and he's a guy that certainly has been productive, so on and so forth, but nobody ever imagined that he would be a second-team All-NBA player, a guy that is captain clutch, a guy that for his size is able to maneuver, shift, crafty, etc. I mean, you know the whole deal when it comes to Jalen Brunson. And then for the team to be able to be put together, whether you bring in guys like OG Anunoby from a trade, or Karl Anthony Towns on the eve of the season opener, bringing him in by trading Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. We can talk about all that they've done. But as we said last week when they fired Tom Thibodeau, and then now I'll say it this week in this coaching search, they have certainly done a 180 as far as the good vibrations, rest in peace to Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, or the good juju that was surrounding the Garden after this tremendous playoff run that the Knicks fan has not seen in 25 years, that all of a sudden only the Knicks, as I mentioned last week, could screw up a lottery ticket and put the coaching situation pretty much a disaster class on how to not look for a head coach, let alone hire one. And think about it. When they fired Thibodeau, it was almost as if they thought, well, you know what? Maybe we could try to pry Jason Kidd out of Dallas, or maybe Chris Finch out of Minnesota, or Ime Udoka out of Houston. Yeah, we're New York, we're the Knicks. They saw what we did here this postseason. So I would think that we could make a trade. We could get these guys come to New York, any one of these three, and off we go to an NBA Finals next year. That is not the case. If this was their game plan this offseason, that's like me. If I was single and I'm going to go out there and try to find my Mrs. Right, but in doing so, I'm going to look for not only someone who I find attractive and who I may think is, wow, has the personality, has this, has that, but no, they're married. So I'm going to pull a Tony Montana a la Scarface to where as I start to build up my power, and this is what the Knicks have done, and that's actually a pretty good comparison. How the Knicks over these last few years have built their organization, have built the team. All right, they fired the head coach, but now they want to get a head coach by trying to pluck a coach from another team that's already secured. Just like Tony Montana, as he was building his power and his reputation, etc. And what did he do? He tried to get the boss's wife, in which he did. Obviously, if you saw the movie, no spoiler alert here, people, because I'm sure everybody that's watched and is listening to this podcast has probably seen the movie 50 times over. But that's what the Knicks are doing. I mean, can you make it up? This is just a flat-out disaster. And it has backfired in their faces, probably based on their own hubris. Because they probably thought the trajectory of what has transpired here over the course of the last couple of months, and yes, we do need a bench and we will add some depth and so on and so forth. But yes, we think Ime Udoka or Chris Finch or Jason Kidd, we'll just trade him maybe a couple of second-round picks, and maybe we'll send him a player, somebody that, all right, if we have to give up Josh Hart, all right, fine. But you know what? We're going to get our coach, and next year we're going to be in an NBA final. You are out of your minds there, James Dolan, Leon Rose, and William Wesley, a.k.a. Worldwide Wes. I mean, seriously? So now, what do the Knicks do? Now, how I look at it is, there is a guy that's out there. And I get it from a PR scenario. I don't want to say it's a disaster. And we know the Knicks front office, they don't talk to anybody. You know the old saying, oh, this person has never met a camera or a microphone he didn't like? Well, it's the reverse for the Knicks front office. They didn't want to go near a microphone or a camera when it comes to a press conference, when it comes to having to meet the media, etc. But don't they realize this is New York? And I've said this before, so I don't want to regurgitate this, but the one guy that's out there that I think and I believe could be the guy, and let me tell you something, they will build a statue outside of the Garden if he does bring him a title, and that's Mark Jackson. Why not? And he may have said some things in reference to some personnel, whether it's in the front office or somebody behind the scenes there at Golden State, where he has been unable to get a job since then, and now it's 11 going on 12 years. All right. And that's going to probably follow him. Not probably. That has followed him to this point and will follow him forever. But if the Knicks handle this front and center and get this out in the open and let Mark Jackson have his say, that'll be over and done with. Nobody have to bring it up. And that is it. Because let me tell you something. The Mike Malones, the Mike Budenholzers, the Frank Vogels, no diss toward them. Obviously, they won championships. They have had a lot of success in this league, but that is not the sexy hire. That is not the guy that the Knicks fan, all right, they may have to settle for, and they may say, all right, these guys have won titles, but for that, we could have kept Coach Tibbs. Why even bother going that route if Thibodeau was the guy that has led this team to this point and could have taken us to the next level, although the front office didn't think so. But this is why that this has become such a disaster there on 33rd and 8th. Because the Knicks didn't have to go through this. I said this the other day, and I said this last week on the podcast. If they would have got the reinforcements to add some depth, add some bench players, add more role players to where they could pick from 8, 9, 10 guys to match up against Indiana, to match up maybe against OKC in a final next year, who knows? And if Thibodeau didn't succeed, or let's say he didn't even get to a conference final, and then you want to pull the plug then, all right, understood. But you just can't kick the guy out in the street. And mind you, he did put a post on his Twitter page yesterday thanking the New York fans, thanking the Knicks for the opportunity, etc. It was a dream job, so on and so forth, which is just another, not that I don't think he was trying to stick it to the front office, but in light of what has transpired here, where the Mavericks did not grant any permission to the Knicks, same for the Timberwolves, as well as the Rockets, for their head coaches to possibly be interviewed by the Knicks. So now what do the Knicks do? To me, the only solution, I don't want to say only because it could be somebody else, is Mark Jackson. I don't think it'd be Patrick Ewing because that's another name that could be floated out there. Jay Wright is not taking the job, as I'm sure you've read or heard or listened on some podcast or maybe on Sports Talk Radio. But again, this is one that the hierarchy at Madison Square Garden, of course they'll never admit it, but they know they don't have egg on their face. They have egg, tomato, and they're ducking a frozen orange right now, not only by the media, but by people like me. Why? Because this was absolutely unnecessary, and it didn't even have to get to this point. And now the Knicks are grasping for straws, or have to grasp for straws, to try to find out who the next head coach is. One more time. As great as the feeling has been surrounding this team, the organization, etc., over the last 5 years, somehow, some way, the Knicks will find a way to screw up a winning lottery ticket. All right, now let me get to the NHL as I lace up my skates, and only one game to discuss with the Stanley Cup Finals, a Game 3, which was not much to watch. And just like I mentioned earlier with the Panthers, I wanted to see how they were going to build off of that double overtime win on Friday night, and boy, did they build. Came flying out of the gate, Brad Marchand with the goal pretty much in the opening minutes of the game. Had a 2-0 lead, and Stuart Skinner was not good in net. Gave up a terrible third goal after Corey Perry got a goal there to make it 2-1. And then the onslaught came to where the Panthers were throwing their bodies around. They were forechecking like a mother. And the Oilers tried to play the Panthers game. And if you're going to do that as a finesse team, all the best to you. And as you saw, it imploded right in front of their faces. And even though you got that little somewhat line brawl there with about 9 minutes to go in the third period, which was much ado about nothing. And I get it. Frustration, tensions boiled over. And I'll be brief here, people, because you know I love to get on my soapbox when it comes to playoff hockey, physical playoff hockey, and rough playoff hockey. Sadly, the Edmonton Oilers couldn't look over their shoulders to see Dave Semenko, Kevin McClelland, Marty McSorley, Kelly Buchberger, and even later on in the 90s Stanley Cup Final team, Dave Brown. They had no players like that where they could go out on the ice and flex their muscle and throw their bodies around and maybe even drop the gloves and pound the Panthers into submission. That is not the NHL in 2025, and nor it has been the NHL for the last 30 years. And that's why when you see the line brawls and everybody with the face wash and the fake toughness, and I mean, it's just, oh my God, it is an eyesore to watch. And this is coming from a guy who loves the rough stuff when it comes to hockey, but the Oilers, who would have to sit on this game for an extra day, is game 4 tonight, and I'll talk about that in a second. But that was an embarrassing game. That was one that you take the tape of that and flush it in the toilet if you're the head coach, Chris Knobloch. And with no points scored by either Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid, and now they're at a point where all the pressure's on the Oilers. And yes, even if they go down 3-1, people could say, well, remember last year they were down 0-3 and they came all the way back to tie the series before losing in Game 7. Well, I got news for you. This Panther team means business. And I'm sure they're aware, and they're going to hear all the whispers if they do win a Game 4 tonight about how Edmonton came from behind. But I got news for you. Tonight is a game that I think the Oilers will respond big time. Now, big time doesn't mean they're going to win 5 or 6-1. But I'm sure with them having to sit on this game, and I get it could work either way, where you have the extra day to think about what transpired there Monday night, the extra day to hear about what's going on, the press clippings, Panthers now have the series in hand. Now they're going to look to go up 3-1. I think that's going to add some fuel to the fire and the belly of the captain, McDavid, and the assistant, Draisaitl, and even throughout the team, because they know they cannot get into a physical grudge match against the Panthers. They're going to lose that 10 times out of 10. And if they go about playing their game, now Stuart Skinner is a big factor here, and I'll talk about him in a second. But for Edmonton, I really feel they're going to respond tonight. I feel that they're going to get back to Edmonton tied at 2, and I understand it can be dangerous because I think it would help if they get off to a lead, even if it's 1-0, even if they trail 2-1. But there has to be a semblance of Oiler hockey there tonight. They can't think that they're going to try to throw their bodies around and try to push the Panthers around all over the ice. They even think about doing that tonight. They're going back to Edmonton down 3-1. So I think it's going to be all about them just focusing on what their game plan is, trying to execute it. Yes, I know the Panthers are going to try to frustrate them. I know Brad Marchand is going to try to get in their ear and with the hand gestures, etc. 1,000% understood. But remember, that Panther team, and they do have a couple of tough players on the team, but please, the Nico Mikolas of the world, and even Brad Marchand to a certain extent, because the Oilers, they do have the one tough guy in Trent Frederick, and not that he's a tough guy, but he's one guy that will drop the gloves, but that's not what the NHL is about in this go-around. So if they stick to their P's and Q's and find a way to get power plays because they were undisciplined and they were sloppy and they were in the penalty box the whole night, if they are able to stay clean and stay away from the sin bin, I think they'll find a way to win the game tonight. I really do. Now, as far as the goaltender is concerned, he is a question mark. And he's a guy that when you think he's going to be a little bit dicey or you're going to be worried about him, that's when he puts up a good effort and plays well. And when you think, all right, he's got this, I believe in Stuart Skinner, that's when he wets the bed. So it's almost as if tonight, which Stuart Skinner, the goaltender, are you going to get? Are you going to get the guy that's going to be rock solid and he's going to stand straight up and stop as many shots as he possibly can? Or is he going to be a guy that is going to let bad goals go by him? And listen, the second goal, Carter Verhaeghe, that was a great shot. Although he could have came out a little bit and stopped that angle because he got it right there top shelf, weak side. And then you saw the other goal there. I believe it was Sam Reinhart who got the goal, which was inexplicable. I mean, that was one that you should have stopped. Again, went short side, etc. And Stuart Skinner on the first goal, it looked like he was about to jump into the swimming pool, or it was just a bad attempt at diving into a swimming pool as he tried to flail at the Marchand goal. But he needs to stand up and deliver tonight. He's going to have to be rock solid because I don't think Edmonton's going to score 4 or 5 goals there tonight. They're going to have to win maybe a 4. They could maybe score 4, but it's going to be 4-3, maybe even 3-2 for that matter. And Skinner's going to have to play his part. He's going to have to really go in there and show his team. Forget about show the hockey world or show the sports world or the fan, whatever. He's going to have to tell his own team, guys, I'm going to be much better tonight than I was in Game 3. And then maybe, who knows? Maybe they could piggyback off of some of that. I'm sure they're probably going through their morning skate right now. But Edmonton, I think they're going to win tonight. Now, if they lose tonight, Are they going to come back similar to last year? Now, it's weird. The Panthers have put up these type of games where they lost the Game 4 to the Hurricanes and even the Game 6 of Toronto in the conference semis. And that's why I believe Edmonton will win tonight. But if they do happen to lose, I could see them winning a Game 5. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win a Game 6, the Oilers. But the Panthers, they have grit, man. They have toughness and they have know-how. And I understand it's tough to bet against them. It really is. But I'm hoping that's not the case. And I'll have to say, I don't think Edmonton will come out alive if they're down 3-1. For some reason, I can see them coming back to a Game 7, but then we've seen how the Panthers play on the road. Whether it's winning the 2 games against the Hurricanes to start off the conference final, and then, of course, winning a Game 5 in the fashion that they did, a Game 7 in Toronto. Remember, they won a Game 5 in big-time fashion when they won, 6-1, and they blew them out there in Game 7 in the conference semis. So I wouldn't put it past them that if they stick up the joint after winning Game 4 tonight in Games 5 and 6, and then all of a sudden have a big-time Game 7, I wouldn't be shocked. But we have plenty of time to talk about that, and we only have not just the 1 game, unlike the NBA, but we'll have 2 games. Because there's a Game 4 tonight and a quick turnaround as they fly from Fort Lauderdale to Edmonton, almost 3,000 miles, to where Game 5 will be Saturday night. So we'll have 2 games to talk about on Monday, which I'll look forward to. And who knows, will the series be over by Monday? That we'll have to wait and see. Deep in the gut, no. And that's not just me based on Edmonton winning tonight. That even if Edmonton lose tonight, I think they'll win a Game 5. After that, who knows? But you never know. By the time we get to Monday, the Florida Panthers could be raising the Stanley Cups over their heads, and then we won't have anything to talk about past Monday when it comes to a Stanley Cup final. So that's what we have with the NHL. Now, I'm going to move it along to baseball. Oh, one other thing now that I think about it, I see here. TJ Oshie, 16 years in the NHL, St. Louis Blue, but then most notably as a Washington Capital, winning a Stanley Cup there in 2018. A guy who is a very good offensive player, center, more of a playmaker, and he has announced his retirement. Now, he didn't play at all this year. I believe he had an injury. His last game was in the playoffs the previous year against the Rangers, so he did not play at all this year, but had to announce his retirement. So congratulations to Oshie on a great career. Also, in 2014 in the Olympics in Sochi, had some big time. I didn't watch the Olympics then, but I know he had a big shootout there, and one of the shootouts had a big effort. So for him, congratulations, and all the best to him in his next life after hockey. Now with the baseball, I get it. We had a few series here that we could chew on here as I get into the batter's box when it comes to whether it's Dodgers and Padres, where the Dodgers took 2 out of 3. No surprise there. Or the Phillies beating the Cubs 2 out of 3. All right, no surprise there as the Phillies try to keep pace with the Mets, as the Mets will conclude their series against the Nationals, and the Mets, Juan Soto's starting to heat up. That's all I got to say. He had a big series in Colorado over the weekend, and he's had a big series against his former team here over the course of these first 2 games. Let's see if they could sweep the Nats out of Citi Field, and it'll be back-to-back sweeps because remember, they swept the Rockies over the weekend, and then the Nationals here in an afternoon tilt. It's going to be hot here in New York, almost 90 degrees, sunny. Looking forward to that. Where the Tampa Bay Rays will come to town. So the Mets, let's see if they can continue this home cooking and continue this winning streak and put maybe some more distance between them and the Phillies. So we'll see what's going to happen there. And then you had another big series there over the week where, let me just pull that up real quick as I get to baseball, because those 2 series were the ones that stuck out the most when it comes to baseball in the early part of this week. The other series of note, I know Milwaukee beat Atlanta 2 out of 3, but that's not the other series I was referring to. Toronto sweeping the Cardinals as the Cardinals trying to see if they could match wits and keep in striking distance with the Cubs. Well, Toronto, who has played very well here, and actually surprising because Toronto, who had come out of the gate rather slow, and now that they've actually trying to get themselves in a mix there in the AL East, although the Yankees continue to pound the Royals as they've now beaten them 5 games out of the 5 that they played, and they'll have the series clinching, or I should say the series finale tonight in Kansas City. But give it up. The Blue Jays have played well. And if you're watching on YouTube, I don't know, my nose is just itching. So my apologies if you're wondering what the hell's going on. And no, I'm not on any drugs. So if you're thinking I need to fix, but hey, people are going to speculate, right? But with that being said, Toronto played well here. Got to give it up. And I'll unpack a little bit more Toronto as we'll take a look at who they're going to play this weekend. And in fact, I think they have actually a big series. They're actually playing in Philadelphia. So that's a series to look out for there as we get to the weekend. More on that in a second. But the big story here in baseball, and there was even a big story on ESPN.com, which I started to read, but it was too long. I had to get ready and prepare for the podcast, of course. And I understand we're not even at Father's Day. It is actually June 12th. And it is 10:51 a.m. We're recording this a little bit late here in the morning. I usually like to start recording at 9:30 or so. But we cannot predict the health of a one number 99 in pinstripes. We cannot predict if he's going to cool off at some point. You would think he will. I mean, it is baseball. But Major League Baseball, as of right this very second, there has to be another league because right now, Aaron Judge is owning Major League Baseball. To the point where here it is, it's not even Father's Day. Can we just hand him the AL MVP? I mean, seriously, there isn't anybody else in the American League, whether it's another position player or even a pitcher, that has done anything close to what Aaron Judge has done so far in the first 2+ months of the season. He has hit a home run in the last 4 games. He hit a bomb 2 nights ago, 469 feet, which I still think hasn't landed. And Aaron Judge, who is a slugger. Remember, he is 6'7", 280. And a guy that, yes, we know he's a tremendous hitter. He's not Gorman Thomas, look him up. He's not Rob Deere, far from it. He's not a guy that's going to slug 40 to 50 home runs, drive in 120, 130 RBIs, but he's going to bat 240. No, he is not that type of player. And we understand he plays a stellar right field to boot. But you also got to understand this. Aaron Judge, as of right this very moment, is batting .394. And granted, it is June 12th. Get back to me exactly 2 months from today, which would be ironic because on August 12th, turning back the clock 31 years ago, that's when the baseball went black, went dark, and went on strike. Where on that date, August 12th of 1994, Tony Gwynn ended his season batting the same exact average that Aaron Judge has at this very moment. Now, let's be real. He is not going to come anywhere close to 400. When the season is said and done, he's probably going to bat anywhere between 340 to 360 to be safe. If he bats anything north of 360, I mean, geez. I mean, seriously? I think Bonds in the 1 year, I want to say 2002. I think it was the year after he hit the 73 home runs. I think he batted 370. And Judge is going to flirt with that. Now, I think he's going to come short of that because the bat 370, I mean, that is otherworldly. That's Tony Gwynn. That's Wade Boggs. That's Ted Williams. And Ted Williams was the last player to bat 400, as you all know, and I believe it was what, 1951. So for Judge to have this killer year, and mind you, his numbers, 25 homers, 59 RBIs, are on pace to what he's going to do this year than what he did last year. Because he only hit 58 home runs and drove in 144. So he's going to be on that pace. And granted, how many games has he played? I got to pull that up. Now, the Yankees have played 66, and I believe Judge has probably played every game, right? Judge's stats. He has played all 66 games. So he's 15 games to go before he's at the halfway point. And he's probably going to eclipse. I would think he's on pace to maybe even smash the AL home run record that he set a few years ago. And RBIs, I mean, let's face it. He is on the verge of having another historic season. On top of flirting with 400, which obviously is unfathomable. But one more time, can we just hand the award to him right now? Because even if he falls off considerably and he ends up batting .333 and he hits 50 home runs on the nose and he drives in 130 RBIs, who's going to top him for the AL MVP? Nobody. So that's what I got to say about him. That's what I got to say about the baseball. And yeah, there isn't really anything else to unpack other than the series that I just talked about. We'll take a look at the schedule right now. The schedule over the next few days, now you have some series concluding tonight, and you have a big series in baseball starting tomorrow night in LA between the Dodgers and Giants. And right now the Giants, they are tied in the loss, and the Giants have won 7 in a row. And they will go into Chavez Ravine, and I believe they play today against Colorado, and they're going to beat them because obviously Colorado, after sweeping the Marlins last week, they have not won a game since. And by them losing today, they'll be in the throes of a 7-game losing streak. Watch the Rockies win today. But if San Francisco wins today, guess what? They'll be in a flat-footed tie with the exact same record as the Dodgers heading into the weekend. And I should say wish is a strong word. Sunday Night Baseball. We've seen Yankees Red Sox a million times. We just saw it this past week. Can we have Dodgers Giants as the Sunday night game? As a matter of fact, it quite possibly could be. Let me just double check that because I always think it's Yankees Red Sox as they're going to play again this coming weekend. So as I pull up the schedule for Major League Baseball, and you know what? I may have to bite my tongue on that because I think it is Dodgers Giants. In fact, it is. So, oops. Faux pas on my part. My apologies, my good people, because every time I see Yankees Red Sox on the schedule, they always play on a Sunday night. But no, it is Dodgers Giants. It is for first place. So that is the series that I get it. In the middle of June, nobody's going to care about. But you know what? I care about it because the Giants, did anybody expect them to be neck and neck with the Dodgers here as we get to the middle of the month and the third month of the baseball season? Absolutely not. So that's one I'm going to look forward to as we head into the upcoming weekend. And the other series of note, Toronto at Philly, that's a series to certainly pay attention to. Cincinnati at Detroit, all right, not too bad there. I know the Reds, trying to find their way, and the Tigers continue to just be the best team in the American League. Yankees, Red Sox, for those who care. You have St. Louis and Milwaukee. All right, to see who can battle out for second place. San Diego at Arizona, Cleveland at Seattle. All right, not bad there. And the other series, not going to get into Pittsburgh at Chicago and the White Sox playing in Texas. Those are series that I'm certainly not going to be running to the TV sets or checking on my phone to see what the scores are for those. But you do have a few series, highlighted by San Francisco, LA, Toronto, Philly, a very good series, and beneath that, Cincinnati, Detroit, and St. Louis, Milwaukee, even Cleveland, Seattle. I know it's out west. And then as far as your standings, real quick, everything is pretty much status quo. I know the Blue Jays are still 4 back, but 5 in a loss. Tigers with a 7-game lead, 6 in a loss, where the Twins are in second place. Royals are now at 500. I'd be worried about them a little bit, considering that they're at 500 and maybe not playing as well as they did last year. Houston now with a 4-game lead over Seattle, and even the Angels for that matter. Give it up. The Angels are a game under 500, and they have swept the Athletics, who are right now out to sea, and they play in Baltimore over the weekend. So who knows? And the Orioles, we all know, have really been a major disappointment. So keep that in mind if you're an Angel fan. And the Rangers can't seem to get out of their own way. They're 4 under as well. And then the Mets now have a 5-game lead over the Phillies. Could be 5.5 by today because the Phillies are off today. As I mentioned, they're going to play the Blue Jays over the weekend. Cardinals and Brewers, like I mentioned, very interesting series this week as the Brewers are just a half game behind the Cardinals and the Cardinals 5 behind the Cubs. And we know what's happening in the West where the Padres are 1 in the loss but 2 behind the Dodgers. But remember, the Giants are sandwiched in between and could tie the Dodgers before it's all said and done by the time you put your head on the pillow tonight. So that's what you have with the baseball. I'm not going to get into any football talk. Aaron Rodgers, I know he's all in, whatever. We know about that, so I'm just going to leave that be. But nothing to get into the NFL as everybody's going through their mandatory mini camps. But I'm going to get to the golf as it's underway in Oakmont, Pennsylvania, the 3rd golf major of the year. And I'll say this one more time, as I said this about a month ago after the PGA. Can we move the PGA back to August? Is it too late to do that? Only because, and I'll reiterate it one more time, for the PGA to be in August, a month where there's nothing going on, yes, you do have the dog days of August with the baseball season. The NFL exhibition, I know a lot of people are geeked up about that, but to me, please, draw the blinds. Those games mean nothing, and I wouldn't watch if my life depended on it. On top of the Wimbledon, which will be at the end of August, going into September. But with August being a quiet month and the Sports Dead Zone Part 2, as I like to call it, that would be the time to have the PGA. Because you just came off of a PGA which Scottie Scheffler won, and it got off to a rough start where you had guys at the top of the leaderboard you never even heard of. And this was on the heels of what Rory McIlroy did at Augusta there 2 months ago. So I want to have a little bit more of an extension to the golf season by putting it back in August than it's supposed to May. Because think about it. Once we get to Monday and the third major is over, next month when you go to the Open Championship at the British, that's it. Golf season's over. And I understand you have a Ryder Cup forthcoming this year, and we could get to rally around that at the end of September. But your golf season is kaput. It's done. The Canadian Opens of the world, which was last week, I don't know, Rory, what happened there, but not to go that route. And Scottie Scheffler did win that tournament, who goes in, you would think, hot as a pistol, and a guy that could be the favorite, considering he finally won a major outside of the Masters in the PGA last month. And now, as I'll get to this tournament, it's all about the golf course. Oakmont is that guy in the gym that is flexed and got veins popping out all over the place. This is one that could put the players, the tour, on its knees here, because this golf course is that long. You're going to have to grip it and rip it. Your roughs are just that and then some. And on top of all that, this could be a situation where you may have a lot of players not make the cut, on top of a lot of players not get into double digits as far as them being 10, 12, 14 under for the tournament. As it is right now, you got guys like JJ Spawn and Gary Woodland, who currently are right now 4 and 3 under. Now, mind you, they've only gone through, 4 and 3 holes, so they're just getting started, where the rest of the field will start getting underway, and they'll tee off throughout the course of the afternoon. But for Ludwig Oppberg, who has been competitive in these tournaments, including the Masters, as you recall, and he's currently 2 under. Now, mind you, he's already at 12. I said, as a matter of fact, I'm dyslexic here. Spawn is already through 12 holes. Woodland is through 10. Ockberg is through 12. So obviously their tee times were very early. But obviously when we're looking at guys like Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, you know the cast of characters that will play this through. This is a scenario where the golf course is going to play big and it's going to play large. And how these players manage, and the weather, it's going to be hot. We may have some rain there on Saturday. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm going to be riveted to see how these players perform under warm conditions, which is no big deal. But because this is a big course and a lot of rough, and they're going to have to hit it right on the fairway, and the fairways could be a little skin tight. So let's see how this is going to play out here over the next 4 days, which you know I'll be on top of. Now, as far as who's going to come out of this, it's easy to say Scottie Scheffler. There's a part of me that even wants to say him. But you have guys that Tommy Fleetwood, who always seems to be in the mix when it comes to this, is one that I'll pay attention to. But the one guy that I think is, for some reason, because of his grip it and rip it mentality, and yes, he's a guy that I think will be at the top of the leaderboard, but we've seen him, whether it is at the Masters or even other tournaments, kind of fall by the wayside. And that is the one, Bryson DeChambeau. Something tells me I think this is going to be not necessarily his tournament to lose, but I think from his past experiences of not winning, especially with the Masters there a couple of months ago, him neck and neck with Rory before he fell apart there on the back nine. And I think Bryson, he's going to rise above that, and I think he's going to shine. That's going to be my prediction. Now, do I think he's going to win? Why not? Roll the dice. Let's see. So if DeChambeau is going to be that guy that's going to get another major under his belt, I think this golf course probably even plays to his strengths a little bit. And not to say it's all about trying to get to the green on 2 if it's a par 5, but we know that DeChambeau has that capability. And obviously plenty of other players here on the tour could do the same thing, but DeChambeau, I'm sure, where this course is going to be maybe not tailor-made, but you know he's going to look at it and say, I'm going to play to my strengths here and try to go to distance and try to really strong arm this course for me to get out to a good start, maybe not a big lead, because again, this golf course could bring the players to its knees. But something tells me I think DeChambeau will be there come Sunday, and he'll find a way to win this thing. And Scottie Scheffler, I'd expect him to be there as well. Why not? Rory, maybe. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Rory, after his bad performance at the PGA, is probably looking at it like, well, you know what? I've got my career slam. I can mail it in. No, of course, I'm not thinking that as far as his thought process is concerned, but who knows? Rory, granted, it's only been a couple of months, but maybe he'll be in the mix there come Sunday, but I don't know. And the same for Brooks Koepka and all the guys that we expect to see there, but I'm going to pick Bryson DeChambeau as the guy that's going to win the U.S. Open there at Oakmont. And looking forward to wrapping it all up, as well as what's happening in all the sports, as I've detailed and covered here over the course of the last hour. In fact, it hasn't even been an hour. A little bit less than that, because other than that, people, that's all I got. Actually, not necessarily a quiet sports week, but one that certainly isn't layered with a lot of different storylines and a lot of different angles that I could go at. And the angles that I did have were pretty sharp, as you've listened to over the last 50 plus minutes. But thank you so much for stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what goes on in the toy department of life called sports. And as always, people, as I implore you to do so at the end of these podcasts, to please subscribe, rate, review, not only on Apple, Spotify, the YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. It's going to increase the visibility of this podcast with all the others that are out there. So I implore you to hit that subscribe button, especially on the YouTube channel, as the little engine I could trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, where I can start to monetize. I can start to earn some income here, because this is my full-time job. I don't have a part-time. No, I'm not doing this as a hobby or off to the side. If you've listened to this podcast, or if this is your first time, this is what I'm doing, people. So I hope I've been able to entertain, inform, and at the same time provide some credible sports talk. And as your source for all the sauce in the world of sports, one more time, I thank you for stopping by. And if you want to hit me up with any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can do so at the following: on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast; on Twitter, JAYREELZ1, just the number; and in the old-fashioned way, the JAYREELZ Podcast at gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. It's in the blood, it's in the DNA, like I mentioned before. This is why I quit my job more than 16 months ago, to pursue this passion, to create a lane, to blaze a trail in the podcast universe, to talk about what it is that I love with nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury, with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. My lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are. The JAYREELZ Podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx to South Beach to South End to the South Pacific and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ Podcast, on the flip, baby.